With how Jim Harbaugh was able to turn things around up at Michigan, that could serve as an example for why South Carolina fans should be potentially optimistic about what Shane Beamer and this program could accomplish in 2024. Now, first question I'm going to answer for y'all that you may have is, why are we talking about Jim Harbaugh in the first place? Well, although you may not believe me, there are a couple of similarities between Jim Harbaugh and Shane Beamer. Beamer and Harbaugh both came back home, quote unquote, to be the head coach. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh played at Michigan back in his college days, and so he quite literally went back to his alma mater, while Shane Beamer, he went back to the state where he was born and a program that was one of his stops when he was an assistant coach back in his younger years in this profession. Both of these guys are also cut from a different cloth when it comes to how they operate as head coaches. They both have personalities that you could say stray away from your typical cookie cutter type of head coach in the sport of football. And they're both also family oriented with how they run their programs. And the other similarity is this. Both of these guys have had or are currently at a crossroads in their coaching career when they've been at their home school. Shane Beamer, right now, he's either fastly approaching his or he's already at that crossroads at South Carolina. And Jim Harbaugh, although he eventually won a national title, he definitely had his bumps in the road that now a lot of people outside of Michigan are probably going to forget. It wasn't always easy for the Michigan man. After winning 8 games in 2017 and 9 games in 2019, which was also part of a 4-year run where they lost every bowl game they played in, Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines went 2-4 in the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic season. After that season, Michigan proceeded to change Jim Harbaugh's contract. They gave him an extension that went all the way through 2025 in that offseason. But his base salary went from around $8 million to $4 million, with a $4 million buyout for the very next season that was going to decrease by $1 million every season thereafter. In essence, Jim Harbaugh went from getting a massive homecoming just 6-7 years ago to now he was being handed a prove-it contract from Michigan's athletic department. Harbaugh turned around and brought in several new assistant coaches, knowing that he had to change his ways or else he was probably going to be let go by his alma mater the very next season or maybe 2 years from now. Time was running short for the Michigan man, but the changes that he made worked out perfectly for the Wolverines, as in the past 3 seasons, his final 3 seasons up in Ann Arbor, Jim Harbaugh and Michigan won 37 games, 3 Big Ten titles, appeared in the college football playoff each season, and finally won that elusive national championship in 2023. Now, taking this back to Shane Beamer, you look at what he has done since going 5-7 in 2023 with the Gamecocks. Shane Beamer has brought in 20 total transfers, a lot of experienced guys, and some guys who were also all-conference performers at one point in time in their college careers. He also changed running back coaches, going from Montario Hardesty to Marquell Blackwell. He brought in an ace recruiter in James Coley and assigned him to coach the wide receiver position, a position where recruiting, as we've discussed plenty of times on this show, has been lacking for the past several years now. And he still managed to keep Coach Justin Stepp, who has deep ties to the state of South Carolina. He just reassigned him to the tight end coaching position, so he keeps those relationships going when it comes to recruiting in the Palmetto State. And that leads me to the question that I brought up to all of you earlier before we started this portion of the show. Should you be optimistic when looking at what Jim Harbaugh was able to do at Michigan in terms of turning things around when things looked bleak, and then looking at what Shane Beamer's done this offseason to this point? Should you be optimistic? I would say, cautiously speaking, yes, you should be optimistic because Shane Beamer, look, I'm not saying that he's now all of a sudden going to win multiple SEC titles and that South Carolina is going to be constantly in the playoff discussion every single year. Before some of y'all try to twist my words, I promise you, I am not saying that that's going to happen. But what cannot be denied with his actions is this. Shane Beamer has sent the message that he knows that things have to change around here, that things must be different in order to get things back on track for the Gamecocks in 2024 on the football field. South Carolina's football program, they of course have an account on X, and they release hype videos from time to time. They released one back on January the 9th, so it's been about 3 weeks since this video came out, and I did go back and watch and listen to this video in order to prepare for today's show. And listening back to this hype video, Shane Beamer made a couple of very interesting statements that I wanted to bring up to really hammer home the point of he knows that things have to change. Here's the first one, quote, "If you're like me, it sucked sitting around on Christmas break watching other teams play. I'm hungry as hell to get started, and I've been waiting on this night for a while now." That was at the very beginning of the video. And then the video ended about a minute and a half later with Shane Beamer saying this, quote, "We're not just going to keep doing the same thing over and expect a different result. We're going to do things differently." So, you got a soundbite from the head coach himself, Shane Beamer acknowledging that things have to change if they want to trend back in the right direction in the 2024 season. Again, I'm not saying that he is going to win a bunch of championships all of a sudden just like Jim Harbaugh did. And I get it. The resources and the history and everything that Michigan has is not on the same level as South Carolina. Obviously, it's a good amount higher. But my point here is this. If you've completely thrown in the towel on Shane Beamer and his potential as South Carolina's head football coach, I would ask that you think again on that and at least look at these other programs who didn't just quit on their guy immediately when things got bad a couple years into their tenure. Does that mean that Shane Beamer is going to win more than 6 games in 2024? It probably doesn't. But acknowledging that there are problems is the first sign in addressing problems, whether it is for Shane Beamer as a head football coach, maybe you in your own personal life, you name it. Acknowledging problems is the first step. And so I think that there's reason to be optimistic that Shane Beamer in this program will take steps back in the right direction because of that in 2024.